Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my house for over 15 years and have never had an issue with my neighbors or my property lines. That all changed when the house next door sold and a new family moved in. The day they moved in, I went over to introduce myself and welcome them to the neighborhood. I brought over some homemade cookies that my daughter had baked to help break the ice. I met John and Sarah and their two kids who seemed nice enough. We made some small talk and I let them know that if they needed anything, I was right next door. A few weeks later, I noticed Sarah out in the side yard between our two houses. She was pacing around with a tape measure, marking spots in the grass. I figured maybe she was planning some landscaping or a garden bed. I didn't think much of it initially. The next weekend I was drinking my morning coffee in the kitchen when I saw workers arrive at Sarah's house. They started unloading wood panels and metal posts. Over the course of the day, they constructed a tall wooden fence completely enclosing the side yard between our houses. I was a bit surprised that Sarah hadn't mentioned putting up a fence. The side yard was open grass, and we had an unspoken agreement to share the space to access each other's backyards if needed. I shrugged it off, assuming maybe they just wanted more privacy. Later that day, Sarah knocked on my door with a smug look on her face. "I wanted to let you know that I've marked the property line and put up my fence, so make sure your kids and dogs stay on your side from now on," she stated bluntly. I was taken aback by her aggressive tone. "That's quite a fence," I said slowly. "Just to be clear, that side yard is shared between our two properties, right?" Sarah scoffed. "Of course not, I had it surveyed, and that whole side area belongs to me. The fence is right on the property line. Like I said, make sure you keep off my property." Now I was really confused and admittedly a bit angry at her audacity to claim that land as solely hers. "I'm quite certain that is a shared space, as it has been for over a decade," I asserted. Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. "Believe what you want, but I have the paperwork proving it's mine. The fence stays." She then abruptly turned and marched back to her house. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Something seemed off about the whole situation. As soon as Sarah left, I pulled out my property records to double-check the boundaries. Just as I suspected, the side yard was listed as a shared easement with rights to access for both properties. Armed with this proof, I went over and knocked on Sarah's door right away. When she answered, I politely but firmly stated, "Sarah, I've checked my records, and that is definitely a shared easement. This misunderstanding needs to be cleared up." Sarah childishly blocked the doorway with her body. "I told you I had it surveyed. The land is mine and the fence stays. Stop harassing me," she yelled before attempting to slam the door in my face. I stuck my foot in the doorway. "Whether you had a faulty survey or not, my records clearly show it's shared land," I asserted. "We need to communicate here, not argue." "Get off my property right now or I'm calling the police," Sarah shouted dramatically. I reluctantly withdrew, not wanting to escalate things further. After reviewing my property records, I decided to contact the city permit office on Monday morning to get them involved. There was no fence permit on file for Sarah, which I knew meant she had to take it down. Early Monday afternoon, I got a call from the local police department. The dispatcher informed me that my neighbor had reported me trespassing on her property. I was completely stunned. The officer arrived a few minutes later and I led him to the disputed side yard, giving him the background. He reviewed my property records and documented that the area was listed as a shared easement. Just then, Sarah came marching over, shouting, "Officer, arrest this man immediately for trespassing on my property." The officer turned to her calmly. "Ma'am, I've reviewed the records and this does appear to be a shared easement, not solely your land." Sarah's face turned red with anger. "That's ridiculous," she spat. "I told you I had a survey done. He is trespassing and needs to be removed from my backyard." I shook my head in disbelief. "Sarah, clearly there is some misunderstanding here on your part. I'd be happy to sit down together and resolve this peacefully," I offered. "Absolutely not," Sarah shrieked. "This is my land, not yours. Get off my property, you crook." The officer had finally had enough. "Ma'am, without proper documentation that this land belongs solely to you, I cannot force this man off the property or arrest him," he stated firmly. Sarah continued arguing shrilly as the officer turned back to me. "I recommend you contact your city permit office about the unpermitted fence so they can review this further with her. he suggested. With that, he gave a polite nod and headed on his way. Sarah stood there fuming, yelling about suing me and having me arrested. I chose not to engage further with her irrational ranting. Once back home, I immediately called the permit office to file a complaint. As expected, Sarah was forced to remove the fence just 2 days later, much to her angry dismay. Though the fence came down, Sarah continued glaring at me any time we were both outside. A month later, I received legal notice that she was suing me for emotional damages from trespassing on her land. I met with my attorney and provided all documentation proving it was a shared easement. He assured me that her lawsuit would be thrown out quickly. Sure enough, at the court date, a judge dismissed Sarah's ridiculous lawsuit within minutes of reviewing the evidence. The judge further ordered her to pay all my legal fees. It was a huge relief to have the court definitively settle the matter. Sarah had dragged me through weeks of drama and legal wrangling over her own misguided entitlement. Justice was certainly served in the end. Ever since the court ruling finally knocked sense into her, Sarah has kept her head down and not spoken a word to me. I'm perfectly okay with that. The silence sure beats listening to her unhinged rants and false accusations. In the end, I'm just glad to have my peaceful neighborhood back, free from her entitled delusions. The lesson here is to always remain calm and seek the truth, even when dealing with an irrational, argumentative neighbor. Rational documentation and communication prevails over baseless demands and lies. The next one is a pro-revenge story. I, 35M, have a younger brother, Todd, 29M, who had a complicated birth and had to stay a month in the ICU. Because of that, my parents have always doted on him and almost denied him nothing, even if it was to the detriment of my sister, Abby, 32F, and me. My brother revels in the attention and has, on more than one occasion, made himself the center of attention at either my sister's, or a cousin's special event. Because of this, Abby and I have a strained relationship with Todd and our parents. Unfortunately, Todd met and fell in love with Lucy, 24F, who announced her own pregnancy at the baby shower my mom held for Abby. When I proposed to my wife, Michelle, 30F, I just wanted to elope, but she really wanted her family to be there, so I invited my family out of obligation. While out, my best man, Jim, 35AM, noticed a receipt from a jewelry store slipped out of Todd's pocket. Jim confronted Todd about this, which led to an argument. Jim told me everything, and I told Todd that he was no longer going to be a groomsman because I knew he was going to propose at my wedding. Todd cried to our parents, which led to a blowout. In my parents' eyes, since Todd never admitted that he was going to propose to Lucy at my wedding, I was unfairly judging him. I refused and brought up Todd's past behavior. My parents couldn't refute this and got Todd to agree not to try anything at my wedding. This wasn't enough to convince me to let him be a groomsman, but I warned him that if, as a guest, he'd try anything, I would make him regret it. Fast forward to the wedding, and surprise, surprise, Todd walked over to Lucy and proposed to her during Michelle's father-daughter dance, and did it in a way so that everyone would notice. Cue my revenge. Jim and I had hired a woman to pretend to be Todd's side piece, who cornered Todd and Lucy and claimed that she was pregnant with his baby. Todd denied this, but when she called his phone, I gave her his number and messed with Todd's phone to incriminate him. It didn't look good. Lucy threw the ring back at Todd and left in tears. When Todd saw the smile on my face, he knew it was me. I didn't respond to a single call, text from him or my parents until after the honeymoon. Lucy has thrown Todd's stuff out and has been denying access to their kid. Todd is furious and is demanding that I clear his name. I sent him a text saying that I had no idea what he was talking about, along with a screenshot of a bill for the wedding, and gave a vague message demanding reimbursement for half of the wedding costs. Michelle knew the whole time what I was planning and gave me the green light after Todd ruined her moment with her dad, so I felt pretty good. But now, even Abby thinks I went too far. The next one is a petty revenge story. This happened way back in a forgotten era known as the year 2000. I was a freshman in high school and just doing my own thing. Back then, I was so broke that I'd hunt for any coins I could find. I even checked the change returns on those long-forgotten things we called payphones. I was also always looking under and behind vending machines. I was an oddball kid. You know, the kind that always wore a heavy coat or sweatshirt, even when it wasn't cold outside. I'm on the spectrum, and at the time I was prescribed Ritalin for it, which made me really quiet, aloof, and completely zoned out at times, and a complete chatterbox the next. So I got picked on a lot. I also had a bit of wanderlust and was always wandering around campus before school started. One day I spotted a nickel on the other side of a small wire fenced area that was covering a power junction line or something. I had to find a stick to slide the nickel toward me, but I got it. The trouble is, some other kids noticed this and started observing me. They found my coin hunts hilarious and mocked me. I ignored them. Then a few days later, that same group of guys started chucking pennies at me. I didn't say a word. I just picked up and pocketed every single one of them while they kept laughing at me and throwing more. They did this again the following day. This went on for about 3 days in total. I picked up every single penny they threw at me, and there were hundreds of them. It only really added up to a little less than $5, but that still got me more cash for my savings. I kept a big jar I was always throwing coins into whenever I got any spare change I could find. The following week, I was approached by one of the guys who had thrown all those pennies at me, and he actually asked for them all back. I told him no. But then he started whining that he had taken those pennies from his mom's penny jar and she had noticed. Then he begged me to just give them back. I told him that for one thing, I didn't have them on me, and secondly, that it was his problem because maybe he shouldn't have thrown them at me to begin with if he expected them back. Then I just walked away. That guy never bothered me again, but one of his friends did once. He told me the guy got in trouble because I refused to give the pennies back. Again, I didn't care and walked away, but those pennies helped me in buying my next N64 game from the used video game store, so thanks for the free pennies. Hope it was worth ticking your mom off when you stole from her, jerk. The next one is a malicious compliance story. First, I love working for this company. Honestly, I really do. It's a great company. Great culture. This is simply an example of bean counters looking to save $50 a month, getting things so horribly wrong at times that they cause 6 figures of lost productivity and damage the reputation with paying customers. Even after it happens, there is no change in policy. I joined a new company in January of this year before working for them as a consultant. During my onboarding, I asked the hiring manager if I would be provided with a company cell phone or be able to expense my monthly cell phone bill. He looked into it, and HR told him, this particular position is not eligible for a company cell phone, as it does not require after-hours support. This answer actually made sense. I don't need to get involved in day-to-day operation support in my role. They also literally never called me once during my whole tenure as a consultant after hours. So great! I don't want to work after hours. Up until last week, that policy was upheld, just like it had been during my time as a consultant. There was never a "we were trying to reach you yesterday" when I logged in the next day or any emails asking for my help after hours. So I was loving it. I want to repeat, this is not a dig at the company. They upheld their end of the bargain this whole time. But here is the MC part of this story. I have no cell phone number listed in my email signature nor on my internal company profile because, hey, I don't have a company cell phone. I have a desk phone, but that's it. I talk with a lot of IT vendors in my role, and I don't need them calling my personal line. I also did not install Outlook on my personal phone or any company apps. So last week, a major update was applied to one of the platforms that fall under my purview. The actual maintenance is performed by an operations manager and their team. Things went smoothly in our QA test environment. I signed off, my boss signed off, so everything was ready, set, and go. The major update goes in. Someone incorrectly performed a few steps, even though that same person performed them just fine in QA. Things started going wrong. Horribly wrong. I was nowhere to be found. I wasn't responding to emails. I had no phone number listed anywhere, so they did the troubleshooting on their own. In hindsight, the fix was relatively simple, and I definitely would have been able to guide the team. The error wasn't even related to the update. They just went down a completely different path to resolve the issue, thinking the update was the root cause. It would have taken a few hours, but we would have fixed it. But in the moment, as things were going wrong, in panic and trying to recover from the incorrectly performed steps, they somehow wiped the database. Somehow, please do not ask me how. The backup was corrupted in this process as well, and they couldn't use it to recover. Dear God, they had to go pull tape backups, which are excruciatingly slow to recover from and a week old. Monday morning, I log into my laptop and I notice the holy hell that is going on. Oh crap. I get on a call with the operations manager. The operations manager is level-headed, no blame is thrown. Again, as I said, great company, great culture. He asks what happened to me. I told him I have no company phone, I asked for it, and they said no. He just had to shake his head. Organizationally, he and I are at the same level. He just has a reporting structure, and I do not. My boss and I got on a call for a debrief, and he asked the same question. I gave the same answer. No company phone. He's the one who told me my position was ineligible for a company phone, as I was not required for after-hours support. All told, it took the team 5 days to recover everything. Rerun all the transactions that were lost from the source systems. Another 1.5 days for the business teams to validate all was well and match up the numbers. My boss did ask me if I had a personal cell phone. I told him no. I do, but it's the principle of the whole thing. As I said, I deal with a lot of external vendors now. I don't need them bothering me on my personal line. During business hours, we communicate over Teams, Zoom, WebEx, and my landline never gets used as I'm barely in the office. He didn't question me further. So, all in all, about 7 days of lost system access, productivity, operational reporting, inability to efficiently serve customers, inability to efficiently deploy frontline employees, etc. One of the business directors was still putting together the operational impact, but he figured it was easily 6 figures. All over $50 for a monthly cell phone bill for a bunch of corporate employees who they might need to call once in a blue moon. The funny part is a majority of IT is eligible for a cell phone because they are required for after-hour support. I estimate maybe 60 of us across all of IT aren't eligible due to our roles. Bean counters. Gotta love them. That being said, I did give my personal number to the operations manager for future emergencies. At the end of the day, I don't want my team and friends to needlessly suffer if I can help. The next one is an entitled people story. So I first met James and Rose, fake names, when I heard my doorbell ring. I headed downstairs and found them already in my living room. Yep, my girlfriend opened the door, and they had just waltzed right in like they owned the place. Awkwardly, I said hello while guiding them back out the front door. I thought that was that, but boy was I wrong. James and Rose bought an ex-council house that had been badly damaged by the last tenants. I'm talking busted walls, shattered windows, you name it. The house was listed accurately, so none of this was a surprise to them. Strangely, I never had problems with the people who used to rent. I was amazed when they left, and I saw the damage they'd done. James and Rose decided I'd be helping them out and had the audacity to come over with a contract they'd drafted, stating that their builders could use my garden, my bathroom, and that they could use my kitchen whenever they needed until theirs was installed. Them handing me this contract was the second time I ever interacted with them. I went round and told them it was ludicrous and to shove it. They weren't pleased and slammed the door in my face. Not too long after, I found them standing in my back garden. My girlfriend had been hanging up laundry, and they'd apparently heard her and decided to let themselves through my front yard, around the side of my house, and right up to her. My girlfriend was practically frozen holding up a pair of her pants while they just stood there, looking around and smiling. They then suggested, given how unhelpful I'd been with their renovations, that I host a BBQ for them and their friends. What friends, you ask? Beats me. I shut that down quickly and told them to never come through to my back garden again. But they weren't done and couldn't leave yet. They had the gall to propose, straight after being told to GTFO, that I give up roughly 1/5 of my garden so our gardens could be equally sized. I told them in no uncertain terms that they can forget it. Not my problem, they bought a house with a smaller garden. I was seeing red, and I think they knew they'd pushed it too far as they scampered away. I guess James and Rose decided that since I wouldn't willingly give them part of my garden, they'd try taking it instead. From my back room, I saw some guy standing at the end of my garden. I went out to ask who he was and how the hell he got there, when in sauntered, you guessed it, James and Rose. Turns out James and Rose had torn down our adjoining fence, and this guy was planning where the new one would go, clearly not having been told that it's my garden, and I absolutely was not on board with this plan. Oh, but wait, they also peeped through my windows and had questions about my belongings. I do kickboxing and have a bob, a life-size training dummy, and did I know that it's scary and should probably be moved away from the window? They didn't want to see it while they were enjoying their newly enlarged garden. I calmly told the man that I was keeping all of my garden, and none of them had my permission to be there. I also informed them that if I catch them in my garden again, they're volunteering to be my new Bob. The last I heard, they tried to bully our 70-year-old neighbor into giving up part of his garden. He's got early onset dementia, and four of his 5 sons visit regularly but don't live with him. I stay in contact with them as I go round to help my neighbor now and then, or just to chat and keep him company. He's a really cool guy, and hearing him upset about some contract and losing where his shed is, I was fighting to not see red. One text to his sons, and that nonsense was shut down real quick. I never thought I'd meet people this entitled, but here we are. Needless to say, James and Rose have kept their distance since my very explicit warnings, which extend to bothering our dear old neighbor too. My girlfriend is back to hanging up washing outside, but she won't open the front door without checking the ring cam first now, just in case it's them. Anyone else dealt with neighbors from hell like this? Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.